Today, normally we just have one person up here giving a talk. Today we're going to have three. The SLT, the Spiritual Leadership Team here at Unity of Calgary, is going to give a talk. And the title, the focus is Unity, Your Consciousness Toolbox. So the Spiritual Leadership Team is the team that holds the energy of Unity of Calgary. We hold the focus, the spiritual focus of Unity of Calgary. We choose the speakers, we set up the Sunday experience, and we do our best to hold that energy as we go through our week of that spiritual essence that we are, and hold the space for others to embody that as well. We're going to be breaking it up into three parts. Tina Thressel is going to be the first speaker. Myself, Bob Elwood, is going to be the second speaker. And Cecil Wanda is going to close it off.
Yay!
And so, without further ado, please welcome Tina Thressel.
You thought about that? Try it. There's three parts of this.
Yeah.
Three of us. That's extra powerful. So, as mentioned, we need a spiritual leadership team. We could ask you what more you want from Unity. And we really listened. We heard what you had to say. And one of the things was that there's more focus and depth into the Unity teachings. So we decided to explore Unity as a consciousness toolbox. So seems the sensible place to start would be with a definition of consciousness. Exactly what is that? Well, it's the state of being awake and aware. Paying attention both to your external surroundings and your internal world, like what's going on in here, which I don't know about you, but for me most of the time isn't necessarily good stuff. And paying attention to what's going on in here, which is always good stuff. The teachings of Unity as a worldwide movement are intended to show us how to be more awake and aware, to be more conscious of what we're thinking, what we're saying, what we're doing, so that we can stop living our life on autopilot and be sitting in our driver's seat. You know, it's kind of a natural human default setting to be on that autopilot. So that's why the focus on consciousness. It takes some effort to be in your own driver's seat and not run on that autopilot. When I Googled Unity, this came up. Unity teaches that each person is a unique expression of God and is sacred and worthy. It emphasizes the creative power of thought and encourages choosing life-affirming thoughts, words, and actions in order to experience a more fulfilling and abundant life. And our speakers at Unity do that. They share their knowledge, various perspectives on the ways to overcome habits, beliefs, unconscious behaviors, the things that keep us in autopilot. A really good example recently was Susan Cullen's talk on the drama triangle versus the empowerment triangle. A very tangible, usable tool to be aware of your thinking and what you're creating with that thinking. Another example was Sig Taylor. He goes back quite a few years, but he was a relationship coach and was talking about being conscious with our words when we're in relationships so we can improve our relationships. And sometimes our speakers bring us back to what sparked Unity, as was already referred to this morning. That whole healing journey started with Myrtle Fillmore and then moved to Charles. So we've kept awareness of healing tools as part of the Unity Toolbox. Our interactive Sundays are an opportunity to look at different ways, different tools. So we've had like the sound sessions with Trevor and Ivy and Sharon Karn and Jessica Arnott and their singing bowls. So it gives us a little bit of a healing experience and also reminds us of how important sound can be as a tool to use for our healing. Regardless of who the speaker is and what the topic is, the sharing of the stories, the experience, their wisdom and practical tools offers us the opportunity to help us develop and grow our consciousness. And the Unity Toolbox contains so much more. Everything from the concept of tithing, which actually is an opportunity to honor what feeds you spiritually, and that can bring a greater abundance consciousness, a greater sense of generosity. We've got the daily word every Sunday, and you have the option every day to explore the daily word for some inspiration, a word to focus on for the day. We have the 12 powers of man, another very important tool. It fuels our metaphysical Christmas candle lighting ceremony. It reminds us that we have so much personal power that we can access and utilize if we so choose. And often one of the 12 powers is actually our theme for the month. And so our speakers will draw on that theme to tie that power into life. So, my own husband, Neil Trussell, was a good example of using faith as a way to get his belief that he couldn't do this out of his head, have faith that Spirit would guide him, and he got his books written that way. Now, there's no doubt that the 5 Unity principles are a foundational part of all the Unity teachings. And Bob, who actually I really see as a role model for utilizing those principles in his life, is going to address that more. So I'm not going to talk about the principles at all. What I am going to say is that to offer the full scope of the value of the Unity Toolbox, we must include a look at spiritual consciousness. So the possibility of structuring our consciousness through meditation and contemplation and prayer so that we focus on oneness and transcendent states. When we focus on spiritual consciousness, we're taking ourselves a step further than becoming aware of our thoughts, words, and actions, which is our human consciousness. And it takes us into that place of transcending to an awareness of our divinity. So the tools of our mission, our vision, the prayer for protection, all of those serve our spiritual consciousness. They're reminders that we are those divine beings. Music is also an important tool for consciousness. When we sing together, that collective energy can help us transcend and lift into that place of awareness of oneness. And if we circle back to the sound healing sessions, those sound experiences can also be transcendental. I know many people will talk about kind of taking off into space and being in that place of just oneness and peace. And that's ultimately where we want to be with our spiritual consciousness. And then, of course, there's the very foundational tool of unity, affirmative prayer, which we've already talked about what it is, and we've said that Cecila's going to close the talk with that. So, because we're splitting this 3 ways, keeping it short, I will just say, ultimately, I believe that anybody who is drawn to Unity of Calgary is looking for more depth in their life. And we provide the toolbox. It's up to you to reach into that toolbox and use any of those tools as you see fit.
Thank you, Tina. How true. Very concise and really helped me understand more about what Unity is and why it's here. So thank you. Tina gave us a description of consciousness, to be awake and aware. And she talked about spirituality. And I would like to begin with what is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual? Perhaps you've heard of the term the lower self and the higher self. Anybody heard that lower self and higher self concept? For me, what I believe is the lower self I call human nature. Human nature is our lower self. Grounded in the physical, we spend much of our time in our own human nature, in the physical, being impacted by what's going on in the world around us and what's going on in our own physical bodies. For me, spiritual, the higher self, is our spiritual nature, which is non-physical. For me, spirit is what's beyond the physical. Often we talk at Unity, it was based on the words in the Bible, the words of Jesus, but through a metaphysical understanding of the Bible. Meta meaning beyond the physical. And that, I believe, is why we're here. Why we come here every week is to get beyond our human nature, beyond the physical, and step into the spiritual, the non-physical. What does that mean? If you think of the spiritual or the higher self, it's all the good things that we hear, that we talk about here at Unity every week about spirit. You know, compassion, forgiveness, understanding, divine order. We've heard all these terms. Calm, peace. These are spiritual in nature. They can't be touched with the five senses. But does that make them any less real? Do you feel calm sometimes? At peace? At one with yourself and with others? Do you ever love anything? A dog, a cat, a flower, a person, a baby, the sky, nature? Of course. But can you use your five senses to touch it? No. Can you even prove it exists? How can you? How can you prove something that your five senses can't even touch? And prove that it actually exists, but you know it does. Because you experience it. And this is where I feel we really need to come. We need to come to this sense of our own spiritual nature. It's what affirmative prayer is all about. Myrtle Fillmore had tuberculosis in the late 1800s. This was a death sentence. No one lived beyond 40 with tuberculosis in those days. She lived to the ripe old age of 87. Wow. It was right. And how did she do it? By going within and claiming her own divinity. Acknowledging that it was spirit that gave her life, and it would be spirit that kept her alive. And so every day she did an affirmative prayer. She stated who she really was, that she was not her body. She was not her thoughts. She was not her emotions. She was a divine expression of God. And she stepped out of the physical world and into this metaphysical, spiritual understanding of who she really was, and declared every day, I am the love and light of God. I am perfectly healthy, whole, and complete in each and every moment. And she strengthened her belief day by day. And within 2 years, her tuberculosis was gone. It took 2 years. It's not a magic pill. And it wasn't, she didn't do it just once every month or whenever she thought she could remember. She made it a conscious choice every day to step into that non-physical reality and believe that that's who she was. And this is what our 5 principles are based on. There's 5 basic unity principles. Who knows them off the top of their head? Some. I encourage all of you, if you want to be part of this teaching, to get one of these little cards and put them in your mind, in your consciousness, so that they are there with you every day. The first principle, God is all good and active in everything, everywhere. This is our spiritual nature. This is what it means to be spiritual. To know that there is an intelligent, energetic life force that is on our side in each and every moment. It's what created us, and it is what sustains us, and what will bring us back to wholeness if we step into it, if we believe that that is true. And having free will, it's up to each and every one of us to choose whether or not to believe that simple statement. And the most profound thing, I think, in that statement is, it's all good. So if we are seeing something in the world that we think is bad, is wrong, is evil, we are not affirming this statement. In Unity, they say what is good, what is bad is simply a misperception. If we're looking out at the world and saying that person is bad, or that event is bad, or that how those people are acting is bad, we're simply misperceiving. We're not seeing the truth. Which means it's not real. We're making it up in our own heads. And as Tina was talking about that crazy monkey mind, I'm sure you all can relate. It can tell you stories that, wow, if you believe them, they'll take you down. So the second principle, I am naturally good because God's divinity is in me and in everyone, is to remember that. And to remember, using our third principle, I create my experiences by what I choose to think and what I feel and believe. That we create our world based on those things. And if we are conscious and we see good, that's what we'll create. If we're conscious and we see bad, that's what we'll create. So be careful of what you think, what you say, what you do. Because you are creating your world by doing that. The fourth principle, through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. So come back. Come back. Take a moment. Breathe at a stop sign. While sitting in the back garden, while doing your gardening. And remember that there is good. And it's not physical. It's spiritual. And it's present. And bring it to mind. Because the more you bring it to mind, the more it will express through you. And finally, the fifth principle, I do and give my best by living the truth I know. I make a difference. So time and time again, I ask you to go within, to connect with that non-physical aspect of yourself, and affirm that that is truly who you are, and then express it out in the world.
I don't know whether I should be here or sitting down trying to organize all of the goodness I've heard this morning. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Remember Charles Fillmore. I am now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge thy presence and power, O blessed Spirit, and that divine wisdom now erase my mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my will according to thy perfect law. One of the things that you can rest assured you don't hear too much of in most churches and most ministers is energy. Unity's concept of prayer is not a conversation. It's not a conversation with something outside, something inside. Prayer is an expression of our consciousness of being. We create the opening, and we can call that opening prayer, but Hicks suggests that prayer is an exchange of energy. I don't think, he says, the universe hears words or needs a translator, because the universe responds to energy. And the vast appearance of emptiness is energy, alive, vibrating, substance-forming energy. We generate energy with our thoughts, our emotions, and our words. God's work is the universe. God made it to move, to grow, to unfold and expand. And when we move with the universe moves with us and through us. All the forces of the universe are the expanding energies of life, and they are focused in us, and they pour through us as we come into expression. On a personal note, 2019-2020, I was experiencing a cardiac challenge. In March, it became desperate. I can only say, I followed Bob's suggestion, put my hand on my heart. Unity was with me. All the forces of unity were fired. The pain subsided. I decided to call a neighbor, Carol, and 911. I barely had time to pick up my cell phone and my wallet and my sense of humor. Well, you never go into a situation without being prepared to see the bright side. Yeah. That's what you call anticipation. And unbelievably, the medics and Carol were there in 4 minutes. The medics went through their litany, blah, 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 and I gave them the appropriate answers. They wired me, ran tests, and said, we realize right now that you should be in the hospital. I said, well, okay, let's go. They got me into the ambulance, and while the medic was setting up the intravenous, he just mentioned in passing, you know, my grandfather, I guess, white hair brought him back to Grandpa. My grandpa was in the First World War. He was one of the boys with the red patch. I said, really? So we had a discussion on Arthur Curry. Then I said, you know, it's interesting. Arthur Curry was allowed to teach up to grade 8. Yes? When Julian went to the king and said, bongo, because that was Julian's pet word for king, we need a Canadian to lead the Canadian forces. King said, yes, we'll do that. I need a letter. So he got the letter from the king and sent it to Douglas, and guess what? Arthur Curry got the job. Americans, not Canadians, because we wouldn't brag about anything. Americans came and said, the best general in any army in the First World War was not Black Jack Pershing, that we all would expect, but was Arthur Curry. And I said, have you ever wondered how he became the best general? Yeah, I don't understand. I'm a guy from grade 8. I said, because he wasn't relying on education, he was relying on something else. At that point, I was being moved into the hospital. Well, I came in and the nursing area where I was gray. And you could feel, no question as to my affirmation. The joy of the Lord is a wellspring within me, and I am established in instant results. We'll be in, dropped the curtain, and the nurse came in, lifted up the curtain, and I said, "Good morning, nurse. How are you today?" "Oh." She dropped the curtain and walked up. "Is he in the right place?" The medic said, and I quote, "Yes, he's a strange bird. He thinks he's going to get over this." Well, the next nurse that came in advised me she was the head nurse. She got the same routine, and she said, "It's strange. Your heart is functioning perfectly normal now, but there are signs that you have had a very serious heart attack." I said, "Well, I can put my pants on and go home." "Oh, no." She brought me back. She came in, she left and came back in and had a cup of green tea for me. Well, mornings are not the best, sometimes as far as drink is concerned. And she said, "While your heart is working perfectly normally, your blood work is suggesting that there are several problems. You'll be here probably 2 or 3 weeks." Well, I denied that. She took me upstairs at 4 o'clock, which surprised me because normally they have a porter to, but she went up and she said to the staff on the 10th floor, "This one's different." And they all looked at me and I thought, "My gosh, now I know how the animals in the zoo feel." I looked around and I noticed that sometimes the female likes to display a trophy, and that there were girls that had a chain around their neck and they had an engagement ring on it. And I looked and I thought, "Oh, the rings are a little bit, the chains are a little heavier." There was a girl standing next to me. I say a girl because at that time I was approaching 80. And I said, "You know, I have a feeling that tonight's going to be an exciting night for each and every one of you." I said, I don't know. I have the same feeling I had when I became engaged to my wonderful wife, Eva." All the eyes were on her. Next morning, she had the ring. 4 days later, I had a stint in and I was sent home. And you don't leave the house, you don't drive the car, you don't do washing, you don't do, listen, you can, you have somebody come in and do the work. Well, Carol stepped forward and I broke the law. I went and had gas filled and sat in the parking lot until I felt I could make it home. And every night her husband would come over, bring the supper. I'd put out 3 cans of beer for him, he'd have his beer, and we'd have supper and discuss world events. And at the end of the month, I was inviting 4. And that's when the greatest thing happened. Now I'm talking to each and every one of you. I became personally aware of the healing power of consciousness that each of you here on a Sunday morning generate. It is our gift, a gift of the Spirit, to Calvary, it doesn't stop there. Truly, as Isaiah declared, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is rising upon you.